So our next guest, you may have heard him, you may have seen him if you come to any of our events in Red Deer in the last couple of years. He's performed a couple times in Red Deer now, performed all across the country doing his stand-up comedy in Toronto, Vancouver, Halifax, Ottawa, and of course, most importantly, Red Deer all across the country. He's also opened for some of the biggest names in comedy, including Brian Callen and Doug Stanhope. He's got an album, Working Comic, on Spotify right now. Highly recommend listening to that. And now he has his own podcast, Nessin' Around, which you can download, I think, on any podcasting app. It's Todd Ness. Thanks a lot for joining us. It's great to have someone on our show that's actually paid to be funny.
Dude, thank you. And you did leave out that I've also performed in Innisfail, and I want people to know that.
Okay, do you want me to? We can start completely. You know what? I'll edit it in. The magic of editing. I'll start with Innisfail.
Yeah,
and work my way down. And you've had this year, obviously 2020, a little different for everyone, I can imagine, for a stand-up comic, but you've been on some pretty big podcasts lately, I've seen too, some pretty popular ones. So I just want to say, on behalf of everyone from Deer, welcome to the bottom.
Oh, hey man, you know what? It's fun to do any podcast because I think it's at least we have the technology now to have conversations with each other. And so even though it is a weird time, obviously, this year, I don't know if people heard, but there was a pandemic that happened around the world, apparently. This is what I've been told.
It was the sourdough pandemic, yeah.
Sourdough pandemic. But at least I think the bright side is, at least it's happening in a time when we have Skype. Dude, imagine if this happened like literally even 10 years ago when we were all using like razors. Remember the razor, like the flip phone? We couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, you could play soccer with those things, though. At least like those things are indestructible. Yeah. But you're right. We'd be playing Snake, or what was I'd be using my Texas Instruments graphing calculator, right, to play Pimp Wars or whatever it was. That'd be our life. You're right.
Yeah, that's all we would. So at least we have video now and Skip the Dish. I mean, not so long ago, and these are the tales we will tell our grandchildren. There was a time where you couldn't even get a Slurpee delivered to your house. Could you imagine not being able to do that? And so at least the pandemic hit, but you could literally sit at home and almost miss nothing aside from, I would say, mosh pits and parties. Everything else you can recreate virtually or just by ordering it. So
yeah, hey, you're speaking to the choir on Skip the Dishes. Like I revealed last episode that I got called out by an Uber driver because he delivered Skip the Dishes to me so much. So it was time to hit the gym after that. But 2020 for you, what I kind of want to know is an interesting year for a touring comic. Saw you were able to, in the summer when things lightened up, headline a couple shows and stuff. But what was 2020 like for you and really the industry in general? I imagine just like anyone else, pretty tough for a stand-up comic.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to think that if you told any comic heading into the year that almost every live show is going to be canceled, there would be so much panic. And what's strange is that's what happened. I mean, everything was canceled. I did a couple shows in January, and then obviously starting mid-Feb, everything got canceled. We had a brief window of time later in the summer until like September where we were able to do local shows. So here at Yuck Yucks in Calgary, and then things got shut down again. And so I think it's just been a paradigm shift for having to refocus from live performance into where else can I put my energy? What else is even productive to do? Knowing that live shows are gone, are there other things within stand-up comedy that you can still do? Unfortunately, like I said, we have podcasting. That's a great outlet. That's part of the reason I started my own podcast, was just somewhere to still put my energy. But you're right. From a live show standpoint, it's been insane. And I think we saw a lot of innovation happen, though, for stand-up comics. I got to give props to the industry as a whole found ways to perform in, live streams, perform outside, perform in backyard shows. And I never really did any of that, but I was a little bit impressed with how inventive people got to still somehow deliver stand-up comedy in this environment.
And so for you, was 2020 a lot of working on new material? Obviously, you've got your podcast now, which I believe is a daily or almost daily podcast. It seems like. So is that basically like what 2020 has been for everyone else, just working on yourself?
I think so. So I speaking for myself, yeah, my podcast is daily. I'm putting out daily episode every single day. And part of it is because it's really fun to do. I can do it at home and it keeps me in the rhythm of doing it. And this is a perfect time to really hunker down and put all my energy into that, because I can spend time also writing material. But if I'm not performing live at least a couple times a week, there's nowhere for me. I can write down jokes. There's nowhere for me to take them. So the podcast kind of substitutes where I can express myself and then have an outlet for that. You're right. And then, yeah, for other people, I mean, it's just like anything else in life. It's like, a situation happens and you decide how you want to handle it. You can sit back and do nothing. You can try to start new stuff. You can try to morph what you're doing in a different way. So I think everyone's handled it a little bit differently. And like I said, some guys are out there and they're killing it with the live shows. Like some guys probably made just as much this year doing the Skype type shows. So I think everyone's handled it a bit differently, but we've been forced to, right? So
like I said, lucky for us, I don't know if you'd be on this Red Deer podcast right now, if not, but we definitely appreciate you being here. And again, I've kind of followed you on Instagram, follow a lot of comics on Instagram. To me, at least someone who thinks he's pretty funny, it's always been a really interesting profession. And I know for you, something you've been working on for a long time. Like what goes into that, especially, you being here in Alberta coming up, lots of great comedy in Alberta itself. For you, what was that step where you decided like, hey, I want to make some money making jokes, and then what goes into that and the process of really working on your craft? I know some people think it's as easy as stepping on a stage in front of a microphone and making jokes, but I think it's a cool opportunity to kind of learn that whole process from you.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone knows that you only get into stand-up comedy to make money. It's one of the most lucrative businesses that you could ever do. It's one of those things where I always knew that I wanted to do stand-up comedy. Even as a kid, I knew I wanted to do it. And so as soon as I turned 18, I signed up for open mic nights and I started, and that's how you start, is you go to open mics and you start popping in and you can do like 5-minute sets type thing on the open mics. And it's just like any other career. You move as much as you put, the time and the effort in. You kind of determine your own path. And so I started with doing open mics, and slowly, as you get better, there's comics that will come along like, hey, do you want to come with me on the road and come open for me in Grand Prairie? And in the beginning, I remember how excited I was. The first show that I ever got paid money was for an out-of-town gig was Grand Prairie. And I remember I got the gig sheet and it said $80. And I could not believe someone was going to pay me $80. And Grand Prairie is a 9-hour drive from here in the wind. Like it's terrible, but I just couldn't believe. I was like, I'm going to tell jokes and someone's going to give me that much money for that. It blew my mind. Right. And then, yeah, you just keep going. And I think the key is that I've always wanted to do it. I've never thought about quitting, and stand up is one of those things where, especially when you're driving around and you're doing so many road gigs in the early years and they're so far away, if you don't feel it completely and you're not really, really passionate and interested in doing it, it's so unglamorous in the beginning that it weeds you out right away.
And you talk about all those unglamorous gigs, and obviously you probably start off touring around, you mentioned Grand Prairie, around Alberta. Is there a spot in Alberta or just a gig in general that stands out in your mind as the absolute worst, whether it's the venue or the people? Like, you have to have probably one of those rock bottom stories, I guess.
The worst show I ever had in my life was one up in Rocky Mountain House. And it was a corporate show that they hired me for their Christmas party. And I show up and it's at a Legion. So already that's a good sign. I mean, what could be a better venue for live comedy than a Legion, right? We already know there's good energy in there. And I went in, and dance floor, there was beer pong. There was like everyone was so drunk, and there's probably 200 people. And I talked to the contact, and I was like, "When are we starting the show?" And they're like, "You just start whenever you want." And I'm like, "Well, is everyone going to sit down?" They're like, "If they want to." And she pointed to like 20 chairs that were over in the corner, and she's like, "That's where you'll do the show." And I realized that it wasn't like comedy was going to be part of the evening where everyone comes and sits down and watches the show. I was just a station set up at the party that people can come and like on it, like if it was like a face painting station. They're like, "There's that, you go over there, you want to do that, you want to go shoot some pool, you go over there. There's a guy telling jokes in the corner over there." So it was insane. And so I literally, I go over and like people would come sit down for a part of it, then they would leave, then someone else would come. And I remember that was one where you keep checking the watch. And as soon as I did like 40 minutes or whatever the contracted time was, I'm like, "Good night and bye." And I just got my jacket and I walked straight up. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't talk to anyone. I just said I did my time and I got out. That was probably the roughest show I've ever done. And that was right here in Alberta.
Yeah, it's just an hour away from Red Deer. And as I mentioned, you've been to Red Deer a lot. We've used you, like you're wearing the Rustlers hat. You've headlined a couple Red Deer Rustlers comedy nights. Honestly, so funny that one of our friends had to leave the show to go throw up the first time you came out for us. So that's a true story. And he knows who he is. So you can put that on your, maybe I should have put that in your intro at the beginning. You can start, you can add that to your, whoever you hand out to for the shows that you once made a grown man throw up from laughing.
I'll take it.
But you've been, you've been through Red Deer a lot, obviously grown up in Calgary, not far away. Previously on our show, all 2 episodes of our show, we've talked a lot about Red Deer, people who live here. Again, someone from Calgary, though, your thoughts on Red Deer, it's, kind of part of your show, but, every time you come through Red Deer, I think you actually probably haven't been back since it's been no longer under construction. But what are your thoughts on Red Deer every time you get to come here?
Well, I got to give props to Red Deer because you guys have great venues. It's one of my favorite spots to do comedy locally because one, I mean, it's just a nice drive from Calgary. It's like an hour and a half and I can come back, whip back at night. And I bet I've done probably 20 to 30 shows over the years in Red Deer. There was an old place called Fratters, I think, Speakeasy. That was an amazing room. Amazing. And then I also have performed in the bowling alley. But I don't know. I think people will know which one I'm talking about. There's one that does the comedy show. And so Red Deer has always been like a core place for me, especially developing as a comic. A lot of my early shows and my early gigs were in Red Deer. Like I said, at Fratters, at the bowling alley, that type of thing. And so I've found the audiences have always been super fun. And it's the right mix of like when I've done the shows with you guys at the bar, it can get rowdy, but in a good way where I feel like people are just excited. And I've always found the audiences are very energetic. And even if it gets a little crazy, I'll always take an energetic audience and excited people over, there's other places you go and it's like, it seems like everyone just came from a funeral. There's no music. You can hear a pin drop. There's no energy, right? So,
and what's it like? Even I remember being from Calgary, coming to Red Deer. It's a little bit different, right? Coming from Calgary, big city, and that. And I can't wait though for you to come back and actually get straight into the city because I know that's one of your biggest pet peeves is you basically had to go around Red Deer to get into Red Deer. So I'm happy to tell you that that's no longer the case.
Yeah, I do. I like a lot of the road work that's been done. I appreciate that. I do. I also like that there's a Peter's Drive-In. Oh my God, that's a huge addition. Now, I think that's been there for a few years, but that's a huge addition. I like that. And I always sometimes I point this out when I do shows in Red Deer, but I find like the outdoor gym equipment is hilarious to me because there's certain, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like there's certain places where there's like outdoor, and I'm like, that's really, for an Alberta town, really good idea when we have, 3 months of manageable outdoor weather to put let's just put a bench press outside. That's always one of the funniest things.
Yeah. And I can promise you, I've never used it and I don't think I've ever driven by, drive by one every day. And I agree. And there's ones I've seen them in High River too, and a couple spots, but yeah, I don't know. I don't get those either. you're talking about just going back a bit, talking about your live shows, the energetic people too. I see you have some clips on YouTube on your social media of dealing with hecklers. Again, do you have any good heckler stories? I know you deal with it every show, but if there are any ones that just got out of control, or I'll tell people right now to go to your YouTube page and watch some clips of you roasting hecklers, because it's one of my favorite things in life. But again, any of those that just really stand out for you?
The most insane one that I've ever experienced was not even necessarily a heckler moment, but the audience literally got into a fist fight with each other, and that was in Edmonton. So I don't think we're surprised. It was in the Yuck Yucks in Edmonton. I was in the middle of a joke and I hear a woman scream, and I'm like, my comic brain, I'm like, that's how good that joke is. This joke is killing now. Someone's screaming. And then I look over, and sure enough, it's like some guys running down these stairs and just sucker punches. And then we've got two tables having a legit brawl, fighting each other. And so at that point, as a performer, there's some distractions you can battle through, and then there's some that you just have to sit down and let them fizzle out. And a full-on fight between tables is a sit down, let it fizzle out situation. So that was one of the craziest, where I've actually seen like the audience fight itself. And then the other weird one that I had was in Abbotsford. There was a guy who was started on my team. Like, he was in the front row and he was on my side. He was really enjoying the show. Then he got a little chatty. I had to tell him to not be so chatty. And I think what happened was his booze started hitting him real hard throughout the show. And I know it did because they were doing Jaeger bombs. And anyone who's still doing Jaeger bombs after the year 2007, it's very alarming. And it's going to be a crazy show. And the guy kept being chatty. So eventually I had to kind of tell him to be quiet. And then he actually answered a phone call. Like, his phone goes off. And anyone else, when people's phone go off in a show, right, they're clamoring to try and put it on silent. This guy just like calmly picks it up and just starts like, well, where is he? And I'm like, excuse me, this is a live show right now. So then I said, you got to get out. And as soon as I told him he had to get out, I don't know if someone in his past used to tell him to get out and it struck a nerve, but dude, he flipped so hard. And then he hid behind the stage and was like whispering threats to me. He went like behind the stage and he was like, I would do a joke. He's like, make him laugh, funny boy. We'll see who's laughing after the show. Make him laugh, clown. I'm like, oh my God. So that one was crazy. That one was like insane. And I have not been back since that one.
And now, like, after every show, especially if you're in Abbotsford, do you ever kind of feel like someone's behind you when you're performing? Like, does that stick with you? Do you have some PTSD from that guy now? Because that would suck. And he was kind of pulled a double agent on you. When you probably think, hey, this guy's on my team. This is going to be my guy. I'm gonna make him laugh all night. And then he pulled a 180 on you.
Yeah. His friends were funny too, because his friends were like, hey man, we really enjoyed the show. Sorry that our friend was going to stab you. And I'm like, stab me? I don't know he's going to stab me. So I don't know. Maybe that's just the norm out there. I'm not going back, so I don't know.
I think it is, at least at some point, I'm going to bring a little sunshine to the show here. I think it was the murder capital of Canada for a long time, at least, like, per capita. I know Red Deer's right up there in crime. We're not quite number one, but yeah, between Red Deer and Abbotsford, you must feel pretty safe every time you're on the road.
Yeah, congrats, man. Congrats on the ranking for Red Deer as well. I'm really proud of you guys.
One last thing I want to talk about, because I actually was at one of your shows in Calgary last year, almost a year ago, right around Christmas time. And I think about this every day, because I think if I ever get to this point in a relationship, I'd rather be alone for life. But right in front of me is a couple wearing the same sweater. And I want to know if you think about that couple. I think you probably know exactly who I'm talking about. Do you think about those two every day too, or is it just my weird thing? 'Cause that's got to be one of the weirder things you've probably seen a lot of weird things, but I hope you haven't seen that more than once.
Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about. And actually, I think I actually know I do. I have a YouTube video of it, because you're right. There was this couple that had like a joint, what was it? It was like a joint Christmas sweater, right? So they each had their outside arm, but then in the middle, it was just sewn together. And they just sat like that. And I mean, yeah, that is one of the weirder things I've seen. Now, when I see something like that, though, I also know that you wore that because you want it to be noticed, right? So a lot of times I won't even give that to them right away because it's too obvious. But then at a certain point, I was like, I cannot not talk about this. You guys got a joint sweater. But yeah, you were at that show. Hey, how funny is that? That was crazy.
I can never stop thinking about that. Like I've worn a lot of weird stuff in my life. I'd never do that. Couldn't pay me enough money.
I would never wear any clothes that were like attached to another person. I don't even think I would ride a tandem bicycle. Do you know what I mean? Let alone have a sweater that's sewn to my girlfriend. I don't know, man.
And there's a benefit, I guess, of 2020 in Alberta is that, hey, do you want to wear this same sweater as me? You can't. COVID.
Yeah, but then she'll just say we're a cohort, right? She'll get you. She'll still get you.
I guess I'm thinking if a stranger asks you to wear the same sweater, you got an easy out, I guess, at the very least.
Yeah, and I would say if a stranger asks you to wear a sweater that's sewn together, I mean, regardless, pandemic, social distancing or not, I would advise probably no matter what.
Yeah, I guess a pandemic wouldn't be the only reason why you wouldn't do that.
It would be a reason, but yeah, I mean, there's other reasons like murder, pervert. There's some other stuff that would be deterrence, I think, as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you go, Todd, before we get to 40 minutes, because I do not have $80 to give you for this.
What the heck?
I don't even honestly have $8. Yeah. Oh yeah. This podcast has made probably minus $80 so far, but I really appreciate you coming on here. And again, for everyone, again, if, give you a chance here to plug your album. Again, I've listened to it actually twice now. Really enjoy it. Go ahead and plug your album, plug your podcast and your social media, all that. You could probably speak to it better than I can.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me on, man. I really appreciate this. Shout out to Red Deer. I cannot wait to come back and perform. And yeah, in the meantime, I have a brand new podcast. It's called Nessin' Around, which is a play on my last name. Get it? Ness, Ness in around. And I'm doing episodes every single day. It's growing pretty quick right now. So yeah, hop in. I think I'll be at 19 episodes tomorrow. And my album is still up there too, Working Comic. And I hope, like I said, I think it's benefits all of us to put out as much content as possible because everyone is sitting around looking for things to do. And I'm a fan of podcasts too. And I think the more that I have to listen to, the more fun and the more that I can avoid by just having to confront actual life, the better. So
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, and again, Nessin' Around, I've really enjoyed it so far. It's nice to have those daily ones. Again, I think about a half hour usually or so. So it's like the pretty much the perfect amount. And I say that knowing ours is usually like an hour and a half. But give it a listen. Make sure you check out Working Comic. Follow Todd on social media too. Todd M. Ness on Instagram. Great content there. And really, it's just a chance for you to support a great local comic, an Alberta guy. And again, someone who's really rising the ranks of comedy in Canada. So I can't wait till things open up again. We can see you here. And every time we see you on the national stage, we can say, hey, we got that guy in on our podcast when there was literally nothing else to do. So thanks a lot for that. Again, I appreciate you having here and all the best in 2021.
Thank you very much, man. And I will say this too. I have a lot of Alberta pride and I might be a bit biased, but I think especially during this lockdown, we've shown that we often get overlooked for stand-up comedy and for that type of stuff. And I think that one of the things, and you're helping with this, is we got to showcase Alberta, show that we've got the talent, we've got the entertainment. And thank you very much for helping out with that, because I think we'll get our due soon, I think.
No, absolutely. And that's why we wanted to have you. Again, we've seen you a lot, very funny comic, and always happy to showcase some of Alberta's best. So again, thanks a lot and take care.
Thank you very much, man. Bye.
Oh dear.